resolution, really? Okay, it says resolution. I found that confusing. Contract, okay. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, June 25th. It is 5:45. This is a special meeting of the Warren Town Council. If all would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We are having discussion and action to sign the sludge management contract with Veolia Water North America Northeast LLC. I believe our solicitor, Mr. DeSisto, will talk us through this endeavor.
Yes, in discussing the matter with those. Beg your pardon, sorry. In discussing the matter with solicitors from other communities, there's some urgency to getting this contract signed. The Veolia company only has so much capacity at its Cranston facility. And the advice is to get this signed as quickly as possible. The issue with Veolia and why we haven't done this previously is because of an old case out there with a company that Veolia acquired. That has been handled, although the final paperwork hasn't been done, but that's not an issue for tonight. But I do recommend that you sign this agreement. Broadly, I can tell you that the agreement is not as bad as other agreements of this nature. It has many of the provisions that I like to see. The only difficulty that I see here is the indemnification portions of the agreement. They favor Veolia, but they're providing the service. That's the first thing. My other concern is if their facility gets shut down by the contract, it's going to be on the town to make other arrangements for that. And you're on your own. In other words, they're not going to compensate you. You'll be paying for the service that they provide, but if they can't provide it, you don't have any recourse against them, but you will have to go somewhere else and make those arrangements on your own. Final concern that I have, there is a provision for testing for PFAS. Those are known as forever chemicals. And it's something that later on in this decade will be more greatly regulated by the town. Legislation has been passed that I believe becomes effective on July 1st, 2029. In my experience, that testing can get to be quite expensive. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see that provision for the town doing pre-testing for PFAS in there. You'll also note they're so concerned about it that they're going to conduct their own testing on the PFAS too. So it'll be on both ends, town and Veolia.
And will that testing start as soon as we start using their services?
Correct. There's provisions in there for regular testing by the time. The town can't do that. You're going to have to bring a company in to test for the PFAS.
Is that something that?
We've already sent out our first test.
Okay.
To accommodate what they were looking for prior to starting the contract. It's a 20-day test, so it's going to be right down to the wire to get that to them. The other issue is in our new permit that DEM is giving us, our discharge permit, they're going to have us do it quarterly anyway. It's going to be on not only the influent, but it's going to be on our effluent also. I don't know, you haven't had a chance to see that.
I have seen it, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it is what it is. I mean, as of right now, it's $650 for one test for comprehensive PFAS. That's the price we're paying for Rhode Island Analytical right now. There's really no way around it. I mean,
And we will have to do that 4 times a year? Did you just
You
say?
do it for DEM, you got to do it 4 times a year generally. But my understanding is you're going to have to test your PFAS loads on the way out, correct?
Every time?
I didn't read it that way, Tony.
You didn't? Good.
I mean, the way that I saw it, it looked like they wanted to see it prior to commencing taking. I guess they just wanted a kind of a snapshot of what we were doing. So that's why I took that step.
But isn't the point of the legislation and the concern with PFAS that it's everywhere? So if they detect, is there like a range or an?
There is, yes. What happens is they cited the federal regulation, I believe it's 1663, which gives out for all this, there's over 2,000 types of PFAS. Right now, the EPA is focusing on, I believe it's 6 PFAS that they're concerned about. And there is so many parts per million. And if it's under that, you're okay. And that's how it's handled.
What is PFAS?
Well, I can tell you this because I went through a 3-week trial on it at the end of 24. They are carbon-based chemicals. As a matter of fact, they're not chemicals, they're organic compounds. PFAS are very slippery. So your nonstick cookware, they're impregnated with PFAS. Your Glide dental floss, PFAS. They're in cosmetics. They're used in extrusion machines. They're in rugs,
Firefighter,
firefighter equipment. That
Protection.
got banned.
yeah.
Like the foam that they were using now is PFAS. So it's prevalent.
It's like a silicone, Tony?
What's that?
It's sort of like a silicone-based material.
Correct, but it's carbon-based.
I believe the concern about it is that it has a tendency to cause conditions such as cancer, or is connected to it at least, which is why the federal government and state government have done action to try to limit the amount, especially for firefighters, into what gets into our bodies, so to speak.
That's correct, and they're also known as forever chemicals. They never break down.
Right.
Can't burn them. They're there. And in fact, the DEM did a study, just a background study. And, it's in the soil. It's like everywhere. That's what concerns me.
Questions from the council?
Yes, so to go to the PFAS issue, if I suppose this testing is done, if it exceeds a certain amount, does that mean that the town would have to find other accommodations for that sludge at that point?
Yeah, the loads would be rejected.
The loads would be rejected, and we would be left with limited options, would be the right.
Yes, and my concern for that, they can be disposed, but it's very expensive. My concern for that is because it's so prevalent, the risk is always there.
Sure. My second question would be, so my understanding, based on previous discussions that the council has had on this issue, is that Veolia is one of the only companies in Rhode Island that continues to take municipal sludge such as ours. We did have a contract with Woonsocket, but this Veolia is one of the only ones that is going to continue to do that.
Correct. I think it's the only one right now.
So this is really a contract where it's it's a monopolistic sort of situation. It's sort of a sign. There's not really much room to negotiate in these contract dispute.
Correct. It's the equivalent of the Rhode Island Resource Recovery contract. You got one place where you can take your stuff.
Understood.
That's correct.
And then we did have a previous conversation, or at a previous council meeting, there was discussion about other alternatives that the town might explore, depending on financial conditions well into the future. I know that this, and I'm not looking to have any further discussion on that. I don't want to violate the Open Meetings Act, but I would encourage the town manager and appropriate town staff to end the staff of the sort of the other agencies that we deal with, like Bristol Water County Authority, Bristol County Water Authority, and others, to see what alternatives we might be able to afford as a town. We might not be able to afford them, but I think it's definitely worth exploring. All right. I think those are my only questions and points. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a couple. So, again, hazardous material, that PFAS is one of them. Is there any other materials that you come across, Eric, as far as hazardous that we would be concerned about?
No.
No.
One thing that Warren has going for it, I guess, if you look at it at least this way, is there's not a lot of industry in town.
Mhm.
To kind of impact this. The town of Bristol has a lot more industry than we do. They don't have an issue right now. They're kind of skirting underneath those limits. Kind of affects them even more because they apply it to the land. Their sludge, they're applying to land. So it's a little bit more strict for Bristol. And from what I understood talking to the DEM today, they're staying under those limits. So I feel kind of confident that I think we're gonna come underneath what they're looking for, you know.
So,
We did another test called a T-clip, which analyzes everything that's in the sludge outside of PFAS. And that was perfectly fine.
Eric, is there a way of if, let's say we did have that issue, is there different pipes coming in from different parts of the town? Would we be able to track it? Or does everything lead it to one pipe and that's where you do the testing?
So we have multiple pump stations throughout the town.
Right.
We have 10. So everything ultimately ends up at either Wood Street or Patterson Avenue and then comes our way.
So you'd be able to detect.
We could kind of
Okay, that's good to know.
somewhat pinpoint things.
Yeah, I read it and, I had some, concerns about the, what do they call it, indemnification, that they're pretty much not liable for anything,
Indemnification. agreements.
yes,
Not entirely correct. They do have some liability there
and they have insurance.
that they take responsibility for. They have insurance, but there are limitations as to the liability that they will have to the town. I'm never in favor of those limitations, but unfortunately for matters of this nature, I think it's something that you have to live with. I've seen worse.
Eric, 9,000 gallons. How often do we take 9,000 gallons out of the sewer station? How often will the truck come?
We deal with, it can be anywhere from 2 to 5 trucks a week,
Really, that much?
depending on whatever the conditions are that we're dealing with at the sewer plant at the time. Higher flows create obviously more sludge.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's more stuff, the lines are getting flushed. But we're in that range. It can be, 2 to 5 trucks.
I guess, I mean, I think this is good. I think we're probably gonna be saving money, but I think we gotta start from day one looking for other ways of processing this, and be ready for if something happens,
Absolutely. May I ask one more question of Eric? And I know we had an IPP. Is it current?
Yes.
Okay, and we can forward that to Veolia.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's a requirement also that we have a industrial pretreatment program in effect.
Okay. So Veolia is the only game in town. There is not another provider of that service in the state at this time.
As of right now, there are talks by the Narragansett Bay Commission that they're looking to start up a dewatering facility, take liquid sludge and process it down to a cake. And I think they're trying to drum up interest from different communities as to who would be interested in doing that. But I think the goal of that is to also look for money to help put this in place. So there's a discussion going on there. That could be a secondary source.
Okay. And is there any processing being done in the surrounding states in Massachusetts and Connecticut that might be an option at some point in the future? Are we even allowed to cross state lines with our sludge?
It gets tricky when you're transporting sludge across state lines. There are other options, however, it would be extremely expensive for the town. There are options in Connecticut, there are options in New York, there are options in Maine, but now you're talking about, freight cars on trains that are taking this stuff. It's not cheap.
Okay.
The transportation costs are very high. There's regulatory hurdles that can be jumped over, but the transportation costs are killers.
All right. So in essence, this sort of proactive look at other things we can do with the sludge, this is kind of it. If Yeah, yeah, I mean, if you said the Narragansett Bay Authority is looking into a different way of processing it, would that have an intention of being more environmentally sustainable or less impactful, or?
Not necessarily, because I mean, we would still be doing the same thing that we're doing now. Instead of shipping the liquid sludge to Cranston, we would be sending it to NBC.
Okay,
And then they're gonna process it down and then they're gonna send it somewhere. So it's basically the same thing for us. It just gives us another option, which by the way, the DEM wants us to have a secondary disposal option in place, which I kind of argued today, actually, like we're struggling to get a single place and they understand that right now.
yeah,
But I think they're kind of pushing this NBC thing too.
In any event, the NBC initiative is years away. I think that's fair to say.
One last question.
Yep.
Eric, so a truckload, 9,000 gallons, $460. And then that's one cost. And then how do you convert that 9,000 gallons into the dry tonnage?
So what they're doing is they're dewatering it. Synagro will take that and they dewater it and they incinerate it. And that's what we're getting charged for. That's the other charge.
Right, and so what would you say 9,000 gallon load would convert to dry tonnage? I'm trying to figure out how much a truckload costs.
It varies. It depends on the amount of solids that are in there. So when we're processing, we're told to keep it below 6% solids in a truck because they can't move it off the truck. If it's thick, they can't get it off the truck. So
Right.
we have to kind of stay in between. So those numbers can change.
Would you say it's 2-3 tons?
I would say it's in the ballpark of 1 to 3 tons.
1 to 3 tons, so,
We're looking at like 22, 24 dry tons a month.
so each run you would say might be $2,000 if we were to do the math roughly? Again, I'm not trying to hold it, but it's still less than what we're paying, so we're gonna be good for a little bit, but.
No,
we'll
this is
decide.
definitely cheaper than what we have in Centerville.
and we are in no position to negotiate a better deal, or because
They've made it clear that this is it.
this is it.
I think the extent of the negotiations where they had us. They were charging us a certain fee to have a truck loaded within a 45-minute period, which we can't do. We need a full hour to do so. So they were gonna charge us a demurrage charge on top of, what we were doing, and we managed to negotiate that in our favor, so.
Yeah, what is it, 90 minutes? I thought I saw 90 minutes in here. Is that what they're allowing? 90
An
minutes, an hour?
Yeah.
I thought I saw 90 minutes.
Madam President, if this is the appropriate time, I'll make a motion to approve the contract.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.